Blessed to be part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Always fired up to talk to our friend Lars Larson. Lars, good to have you with us.
Good to have you. Good to be on in Boise. I got to tell you something. Aren't you glad that all those powerful people who would have found themselves at risk had Jeffrey Epstein gone on trial? Aren't you proud? Aren't you just happy that they are now free from people like Prince Andrew, Randy Andy, as apparently they call him in the UK? You've got Harvey Weinstein is a buddy of the late Jeffrey Epstein, who is said to have committed suicide. Although, isn't it interesting that a guy who according to the federal prisons, tried to kill himself just a few weeks ago, and naturally they put him on suicide watch, was mysteriously taken off suicide watch, and then mysteriously his prison guards didn't pay any attention to him for hours, even though they're supposed to check on him, even not on suicide watch, they were supposed to check on him every half an hour. They somehow left him alone for 2 hours, and the guy who had previously been on suicide watch, when you're on suicide watch in the federal pen or federal correctional center, they can put you in a room buck naked if they think it's necessary to keep you from killing yourself, or they can give you clothing that's made out of paper that's virtually impossible to turn into a noose. So they take away your shoelace, they take away your belt, but they take away your bed sheets, they take away your T-shirt, and all the other things you might hang yourself with. And for some reason, this guy who had been on suicide watch is put by himself into a non-suicide watch cell with a bunk bed that had an upper story to the bunk bed, like most bunk beds do, and managed to take his bed sheet, we learned over the weekend, yesterday, and because I've been gone for a week, I took a little vacation with Tina. We went out for a road trip, and he manages to hang himself while the guards are violating the rules and not paying any damn attention to him. Now, tell me, did he commit suicide or was he killed?
My own personal opinion is he was killed.
And I think he may have been killed by the most common method. If you think the guy really did try to commit suicide, the shrinks say that pedophiles very rarely commit suicide because their psychological makeup makes them narcissistic. They have a very high, impression of themselves, and so they typically do not commit suicide. But let's say he had tried a few weeks ago. What would be the easiest way to let a guy suicide? Put him in a cell by himself with nobody looking, a bunk bed, and some sheets you can tie into a noose, and let him kill himself.
Well, I was shocked that he had a cellmate who was a former cop who was there for the rest of his life. You would think that somebody like
for murder,
Epstein would be there by himself.
Well, in some ways, you might think that if the person put in his cell was put there because he's there for the rest of his life, but he gets some privileges by being a trustee. Almost every correctional center has trustees where if you mind your P's and Q's, you get some additional privileges. But having somebody else in the cell with him would probably be a good guard against suicide, especially if the person who's there, who's getting these extra privileges by being in that unique situation, realizes if the guy tries to commit suicide and I alert the guards, then that's a positive for me. And if you're going to be in prison for the rest of your life, I would imagine, I've never having done it myself, that you're probably looking for all the privileges you can get because this is your situation for the rest of time.
Indeed. Lars Larson joining us. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Catch Lars, LarsLarson.com, Lars Larson Show. 2 shows a day. He's rested, he's ready, and he's ready to roll. What do you make of the thing that's going viral today, the Chris Cuomo thing? We can't even play it because there's just too much profanity. Fredo is now the new N-word for Italians, apparently.
Well, somehow we've decided that certain kinds of things are okay to say. We hear liberals say things and Kevin, I think you probably have the same reaction to this that I do, where you say, gosh, if a Republican had said that very same thing, they would be in huge trouble. But somehow when Democrats say it's okay. So Chris Cuomo shows him threatening to effing throw someone down the stairs for calling him Fredo. All of us who've watched The Godfather, and I hope there's nobody out there who hasn't watched the Godfather movies. They are classics. But in any case, he's mad because he was referred to as Fredo. So.
Right. It was, don't you know who I am? Lars Larson, there's been a lot of things going on since you took your ever so brief sabbatical, sir. the president coming out in favor of red flag laws, then the NRA pushing back, Congress in the mix. Look, there's nobody that's a bigger champion of the Second Amendment than you, Lars Larson. Your thoughts?
Well, I'm very uncomfortable with the president saying that he's in favor of red flag laws. And let me tell you why. They are problematic. Let's use the softest term I can use. I think they're ridiculous because, Kevin, on one hand, I would not debate that red flag laws applied would make society safer. Now, they would also violate the Constitution dramatically, and I can tell you why. So what if the Boise police chief said, we're going to change the rules. To hell with the Constitution. I know that your police chief would not do this or your county sheriff, but our officers are now empowered to walk up to anybody on the street and say, I'd like to see your papers. I'd like you to identify yourself. Well, a police officer can ask you to identify yourself, but unless you're being arrested, they cannot force you to identify yourself. We do not live in a papers, please society, and the Constitution prevents that. If you're minding your own business, if you're driving a car, they can ask you for three things: registration, driver's license, and proof of insurance. Everything else they ask you is optional. Now, would we be a safer society, Kevin? Just answer this straight out. If anybody walking down the street could be stopped by the police and asked to identify themselves at any time, would we be safer?
Yes.
Yeah, we would be. Now, you'd have to violate some people's constitutional rights to do it, but we'd be safer. So are you willing to make that deal? Because red flag laws go this way, and they're all written at the state level slightly differently. But, an ex-girlfriend or an ex-boyfriend could say, my girlfriend has threatened to kill me. Now, I've been married I've been with Tina 25 years. We've been married for now 22 years this year. But back when I was dating, there were probably some girlfriends who said, that they hated my guts and that they would probably be willing to tell you I'd said crazy things whether I said them or not. Right? Now, if you're mad, in fact, I'll tell you something. Tina and I spent a couple of days in Vegas, and she was down playing the slot machine. She likes to play the penny machines, right? She's sitting there, and this woman who'd been kind of hanging around, she said she was a good-looking younger gal, right? She's just standing there and kind of not playing the machines or anything else. And this guy walks in with another attractive young lady, and the first young lady who'd been hanging out by herself picks up a beer bottle and says, I knew you were here with her, and cracks it across this guy's skull. And he's bleeding everywhere, and he's actually apologizing to everybody for all the fuss. So and security comes in and they drag this woman off. Now, do you think that's an unusual thing that either ex-boyfriends and ex-girlfriends get mad? And he's like, look, I told you it was over months ago. Tina heard him saying this. Okay, he has an ex-girlfriend who is not happy that he has ended the relationship, right? Now, she cracks a beer bottle across his skull and has him bleeding all over the floor. Is that unusual? It's somewhat unusual, but do you think it happens probably at least once or twice a week somewhere in America? Yes. Now, would that same person go to the cops knowing that your Second Amendment rights are important to you and say, why, he has told me that he's thought about killing me, killing members of his family. Now, it doesn't matter if it's true or not. She tells the judge this, and they write up an order. And she realizes the effect of this red flag order will be that he will lose. They will come and take all of his guns, and he will lose them until he proves he can get them back. And how do you prove the negative? And by the way, he won't get due process. And in this case, due process would be if your girlfriend or boyfriend wants to go to court and say, why you said crazy things and threatened to kill people. You can go to court and say, no, I haven't. She's angry because our relationship ended. But the accused in this case gets no right to confront his accuser, gets no hearing, gets no nothing. Just the cops show up and take your guns away. Now, Kevin, I will tell you, there probably are people who have said crazy things, who have said threatening things, who we'd all be safer if they didn't have guns. The question you have to ask yourself, though, is are you willing to throw the Constitution out in that case and say, if somebody, ex-girlfriend in this case, accuses ex-boyfriend of saying crazy things and being a threat, we should take his guns away without giving him any due process whatsoever. If you're willing to do it, Kevin, I'd be the first to admit we will probably stop some violent things from happening. We will also violate the constitutional rights of a number of Americans. If you're okay with that, I'm not. But that's the problem with red flag laws. And if you have somebody who truly is dangerous, and they're dangerous because of their actions, they actually have threatened to kill somebody, then accuse them of the crime. If you make an imminent threat to harm somebody else in every community, including Boise, that is a criminal act. You have free speech up to the point where you make somebody fear that you are about to take their life or hurt them badly. And at that point, you can be accused of a crime. Use that. No, we want the red flag law, where we don't have to test any of it. Now, to some extent, those red flag laws probably will make things safer, but it will have to come at the expense of the Constitution. So everybody who says they're a fan of red flag laws needs to be asked, are you okay with throwing people's constitutional rights out? Kevin, I'll bet your local sheriff's department could catch a lot more drug dealers if they were allowed to pull somebody over and say, sir, I'm going to search your car. I'm going to search your trunk. If you've got a locked briefcase or bag inside that trunk, I'm going to open up, and I'm not using a warrant. Now, you'd say, well, that's not constitutional. You say, no, but you catch a lot more drug dealers that way, wouldn't you?
Well, and you've seen it in major cities back in Philadelphia and in New York, the stop and frisk thing.
Well, but stop and frisk literally was done in a way that was constitutional. It was, because they're talking about patting somebody down because they may be carrying a weapon. And that was done in a way that the courts actually tested. But, Kevin, if you ask anybody, if the cops pull you over, can they just search your entire car and search your trunk without your consent? The answer would be, of course not. You don't even have to be a lawyer to know that. And you say, well, what would happen if the cops did? Everything they find is not eligible for being used in court. It's off limits. Why? Because you violated somebody's constitutional rights. So are you willing to throw that out? Because once we start throwing out pieces of the Constitution, it's like they say, you can't be a little bit pregnant. Once you've decided it's okay to violate somebody's constitutional rights because we'd all be safer, how many of them are you willing to throw out? How about right against search and seizure? How about your right against self-incrimination? I bet we could get a lot more people found guilty if you could just beat people's feet with a rubber hose until they confess. Don't you think we could get a lot more convictions that way? Come on.
Yeah.
If you're local, what's your sheriff's name?
Let's see. We have Steve Bartlett in Ada County, and then
Steve Bartlett said every time we catch somebody that we're pretty sure is guilty, we're going to beat his feet with a rubber hose until he confesses. And now we've got a 100% closure rate on crimes. What do you think the public would say? We can't do that. Why not? Constitution says you can't do that. Can't force somebody to confess. Well, that's your Fifth Amendment right. Yeah, but we decided the Constitution's now optional. And you'll be safer if we beat confessions out of people. You'll be a lot safer, won't you?
The one, the only, Lars Larson. Catch him tonight at 6, rested, right on, ready to roll. Lars?
And thankfully, I'm not a friend of Jeffrey Epstein, so I think my life is safer. I'm not a friend of the Clintons either, which means I'm not likely to join the list of body bags.
And that's reassuring. Lars, thank you.
Take care, Kevin.
All right, our great friend Lars Larson. Catch him tonight at 6. Coming up, again, we mentioned this last hour. How good do you feel that a high school team is not called the Braves anymore? They're the Brave. Is that grammatically correct? Number 1 and number 2 at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Are the Meridian Warriors next? How about the Savages? Let's just go through the list, right? I'm offended. I'm offensive. Why don't you join me? Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Blessed to be with you, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. So, if you missed last hour, you can always catch it on the KIDO Talk Radio app or on our website, KIDO Talk Radio. Ray Amaya puts in the podcast. We're rolling, and we're talking a little bit about the Boise Braves and this politically correct, I don't even know if you can say posse. I don't know what you can say anymore. Boy, it's not looking good for career advancement for yours truly. I've got unnamed supervisor in who's just sitting there typing notes as we speak. But you know something? We're not going to be like Chris Cuomo. We're not going to be woke. We're just going to continue to drive on here, even though we are under observation. And really, conservatives have been under observation since the sexual revolution, right? And we have to do our very best to not be hypocrites like Chris Cuomo, to not be hypocrites like the left, the loony left. So 10 years ago, 5 years ago in talk radio, you could say these people are misguided, and you could use a lot of names for the people that, hallelujah, we have the native tribes send a letter to all the schools. It's time to get rid of your mascots. They're offensive. Like I said last hour, what are they calling the Cleveland Indians now? The Clevelands? Hey, everybody, it's the Clevelands. Boise High, the term Braves is offensive, so they got rid of it. By the way, it'll take them 3 to 5 years to make that happen, so we don't know how much money that'll cost, but you had all the politically correct white people going, I'm so happy that we're not offensive anymore. This country was founded on the offensive. It was founded on deplorables. Speaking of which, Max in Garden City joins us now, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Max.
Good morning. I am the grand deplorable. Please remember that. Since when have we become a nation of thin-skinned whiners? I got a question to ask you, Kevin. First of all, being a little bit of a grammar Nazi as I am, the Brave what? The Boise Brave what? Brave ones, brave runners, brave thin-skinned whiners? Well, the Brave what?
Just the Brave.
Oh, that sounds excellent. I'm excited. So another dent in our educational system. And here's a question that no one's asked yet. Do any of these an Indian tribe, what is that? That's 5 people who call themselves elders sitting in the back of a single-wide trailer penning a letter to the school district. Do they have any of their children in Boise High School? Or in the Boise School District? Are any of their children there? If not, they should have no say. I can't run up to Middleton and decide that I'm going to have say about their school district because I don't live in the district. I don't have children or grandchildren in the district. Am I reasoning this improperly? Is there a skew in my thought?
Not according to me.
I mean, guys, once again. Oh, and as far as Epstein, of course, that's a Clinton hit job. That's as clean as they come. Another Arkansas hits the road. Those are my 2 topics for the day.
Well, Max,
just remember, folks, you don't have a right to dip into another school board if you don't live there or have family there.
Whatever happened to local control? Kevin Miller in the morning. Our time is 8:27. Traffic and weather together. KIDO Talk Radio. Hello, Dave. Love that, Larry. Let's go back to the phone. Speaking of lovable, Liberal Steve joins us now. KIDO Talk Radio. Hello.
Good morning, America. Lars Larson is not a lawyer, period. Never went to law school, hasn't had a day in law school. He hasn't even had a complete college career. He dropped out his first year, and then I think he had a little bit of journalism up there in Spokane, but he is a self-made Scandinavian
Look,
American.
Lars Larson has worked in television and radio for 40 years. He's been acknowledged as one of the experts in that field. I will not stand by and allow you to disparage us with the truth.
With the truth. Thank you.
Look, Lars is a good guy, and like I said, I love Lars. So, okay, you've set the table. What can we do for you, sir?
Talking from experience, he said, Kevin, they can't go in your car. That's breaking the Constitution. That it's such a yes.
Well, wait a minute. Now, wait a minute. Are you a lawyer?
No, I'm speaking from experience and from
you've been searched and seized and stuffed and cuffed
and towed. It's like the gentleman over there in Oregon where they brought his car all the way in, the old guy, because he was visiting his daughter, and the one ISP or whoever he was thought he had something on him, and he wasted, and then they came back and sued. Yeah, I was going through the Canadian border up in Minnesota. Their dogs couldn't find anything, but I kept laughing. I said, what a stupid question to the guy. He got pissed at me.
Wait a minute. They were searching you for the drugs? I wonder why.
But, Kevin, they pulled my car over. They have you set it over to one side.
Now, wait a minute. What does this have to do with what we were talking about?
I'm saying is they don't need when he said, "Oh, they can't search or they're breaking the law," they'll fine, lock it up. We'll tow it in. We'll get a warrant from a judge to go through it. So most people will say, most smart people, if you don't have anything to hide, will say, "Sure, take a look," or whatever he will. Yeah, that's fine. So he doesn't know what he's talking about. And then being frisked. Yeah, that's unconstitutional also. It's all on what probable cause, how far you want to stretch that. So when he puts that stuff out there, people believe him that they can't do that. They can do whatever they want, period. It's been like that since we've lost the Constitution. It was probably in about right after the Civil War.
Well, we still love you. Thank you for the call. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Maggie. We continue on under moderation, but being monitored. We are talking about a few topics today of concern. 580-5436. 580-KIDO. Kevin Miller in the morning as we move along. This issue involving what is and what isn't politically correct. I mean, how many people are offended by the term Braves, Seminoles, Warriors? We'll get to that coming up. Joining us now from Fox News Radio, only on KIDO Talk Radio in the Treasure Valley, Jeff Monosso. Jeff, good to have you with us.
Hey, my friend. Good to be with you.
We take a look at another tough story here. We've got a family of a child crushed in a minivan folding seat filing a lawsuit. You're getting all the tough ones this week, my friend.
You know, you may remember the story of 16-year-old Kyle Plush, who died of asphyxiation last year. He called 911 twice when he became trapped in his family's 2004 Honda Odyssey minivan. He was reaching in the back seat to grab some tennis gear outside school, Seven Hills School, Cincinnati, Hamilton County, and the seat folded over on him, and he couldn't reach his cell phone. The only thing he could do was hit his cell phone, the button. He hit it a couple times, and it calls 911 in his pocket. He was able to tell the 911 operator in both calls that his location, Seven Hills School, a gold Honda Odyssey minivan, kind of what happened. He couldn't breathe. And the family is saying all along that we just want change. We want to clean up what was considered a failed 911 system. And they allege in this lawsuit that the city has not cooperated with them. The city spent more than $100,000 on 2 investigations that exonerated the 911 call takers and officers of all wrongdoing, and that the 911 call takers and both Cincinnati police officers who responded failed to even be interviewed. And it's alleged in this suit that, among other things, that these officers failed by not getting out of the car in the parking lot when they rode through. They didn't see anything. They didn't spot anything. And so they just moved along. And the call was classified as basically an unknown trouble rather than being required, rather than being classified as an immediate fire rescue. And one of the problems is that one of the call takers disregarded a program standards when she inappropriately engaged TTY. That's for a silent call. Apparently, she thought it was a call where it was a hearing impaired individual. And so what that does when you activate TTY is it reduces the volume of Kyle's voice, made it difficult to hear him. She also failed to play back the call and hear Kyle's description of the van, his location, his fear that he would die soon. And so it was a combination of things. And the family says, look, this isn't about money. We haven't sued Honda. We're suing because the city has failed to act and react appropriately to this. And even though the city's added about $500,000 in tech upgrades and staffing, the family says it's not enough. They need to take responsibility. I mean, they spent all this money to clear these people, these employees, but there, more needs to be done. I mean, they had verified location through geo-tracking technology. They had his location. It just wasn't used.
Jeff Monosso, to be continued. We appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
You bet.
580-5436-580-KIDO. This just in, Ivanka Trump is quietly calling lawmakers about the gun debate. Look, if the president goes here, this is not good for him. He's going to alienate a big portion of his base, particularly of us here in Idaho. Other top headlines: the president delaying tariffs on Chinese-made laptops, cell phones until Christmas time. And, of course, a dash of the Boise Braves. Let's go to Tea Party Bob, Gem State Patriot. GemStatePatriot.com. Good morning, sir.
My goodness, so many different things going on here in what is turning out to be our more liberal Treasure Valley. You know, too many people are too easily offended by nothing these days. Most of what they are offended by is made up by people in the media looking for a fight in the political or news media arenas. So when you hear someone like Chris Cuomo complaining about someone calling him Fredo, it makes you wonder just how sensitive these types of celebrities are as they're calling others racist and Nazis over the airwaves. I spent many years working in New York during the Mario Cuomo days, a man who was a three-term governor. And there were many rumors of mob connections, although no proof was ever brought forward. Now his son Andrew reigns over the Big Apple, and he has been called one of the most corrupt governors of New York and was accused of influencing the Moreland Commission, which he formed to attack corruption in Albany. Now, if anyone thinks that this family is completely innocent of any bad history, they would be very wrong. Chris Cuomo's objection to Fredo comments is no more than a case of the pot calling the kettle black. He disputes some of the most outrageous comments over the air on his show about our president and others on the right, and has never been called to the carpet for it. Now, here's a man who interviewed Congressman Sean Duffy recently and demanded that Duffy prove there's no proof of any Russian collusion. Now, think about how dumb that question was. How do you prove that there's no proof? Chris Cuomo is a typical left-wing idiot who is prevalent in today's left-wing media like CNBC and CNN that continue to aggravate the situation between left and right, stirring the pot while their ratings sink to the lowest level ever seen on news shows. And on the name change of the Braves to Brave, it's just one more piece of evidence that the liberal movement has been taking hold in the Treasure Valley. I'm not sure why anyone would consider this detrimental or offensive to a native tribe, but I assure you this is just the beginning of this movement. The educational system of our state is where we will find the roots of the movement. I have said before, the state is in control of our educational system, and that there is no longer any real control from the local level. All I can say is the times, they sure are changing, Kevin.
Tea Party Bob joining us. Getting back to this Brave thing, you heard the comments there thanks to Channel 6 or 9. I don't know which it is. Is it 6? Is it 9? Is it 9? Is it 6? Who knows? They're confusing. They run the same stories on both stations and just change the title. But I guess that's how television's going these days. Where, you know, you have people going, hallelujah, yes, ah! And you're going, if it was that bad, why didn't you bring it up 5-10 years ago? And you could see the liberal influence. And as I said, are the Meridian Warriors next?
Well,
are the Meridian Warriors next, huh?
I think you're going to see more and more of this as time goes on. Remember all of the statues they took down of all of the people throughout our history. They're trying to change history. You can't change history. You can rewrite it in the books, but you can't really change it.
Well, and, to the victor go the spoils, history, hence the word, his story.
Now, Kevin,
that's where it comes from.
I think we're both in for a shock in the next 5 to 10 years about what's going on in our state. And I don't think it's stoppable. I really don't.
Let me extend you for a second here, though, because we have many segments, and the liberty groups in the state have been successful to a degree, and I know I'm not their favorite. But, on one hand, you have the liberty groups that, when it comes to guns or something like that, they're very effective at lobbying, or about as effective as a grassroots group can be. But then you have the Idaho Freedom Foundation, when they're not suing people, at one time was very effective, and their influence has waned. But when it comes to let's say, fiscal issues, there really isn't anybody, the grocery tax, the property taxes that you and Steve Ackerman have been talking about for years. There really isn't anybody. I mean, that should be like a nonpartisan, non-issue, whether you agree on guns or ammunition or what have you. This should be a point of contention for everyone. Do you agree or not? I mean, there doesn't seem to be a rallying force, if you will.
No, Kevin, I agree 100%. But, I remember going down to the state legislature and fighting for the repeal of the grocery tax. I went down there and I sent a letter to every legislator that is in the State House about Common Core and getting a hearing on it. They don't care. They never have cared. They're only interested in getting reelected. Look at the garbage we have in our Senate and House. We have cronies that have been in for 5 and 6 terms. Nobody wants to throw them out. If you don't change the diaper, you're going to have a stink.
Well,
and that's what we have here in Idaho.
That's the line of the day. If you don't change the diaper, you're going to have a stink. Thank you.
You have a great day, Kevin. Thank you.
All right. Keep your diapers to yourself. You and me both.
Right. Take care, buddy.
Thank you. Our great friend, the champion of freedom, the sweet prince of the Treasure Valley, Tea Party Bob. Phone number's here, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. A few things we're talking about, the Boise Brave versus the Boise Braves, and Ivanka Trump starting to lobby lawmakers about guns. Is this the right move for the president? Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Living the dream, blessed to be with you. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. But if you want to call in, that's great. If not, well, just listen. Sometimes we learn more from listening than being a part of the process. So again, some of the top stories trending nationally. Chris Cuomo losing it, swearing. I'm sure Glenn, Stu, Biff, Bop, and the others will have more on that coming up. Sean might have some of that and some others. But a couple stories that we are looking at. The president delaying tariffs on Chinese-made laptops, cell phones, and other items until Christmas. And the president's daughter quietly calling lawmakers about the gun debate. That's right, the gun debate. Folks, this is something that the president should stay away from. This is something that will earn him no love from the base. This is something that could, well, and many people have assumed that the president didn't want to be elected, maybe doesn't want to be reelected, which I doubt, but the liberal pundits and everything else, right? Well, this will not aid him in being reelected, right? This is not good for the president of the United States. And we have other people going crazy. We have Julian Castro to the president saying Americans were killed in El Paso because you stoked the fire of racism. Look, we are all responsible for our actions. We are all responsible for what we do and what we say. But let's face it, the president of the United States did not cause these deranged people to lose their sanity and harm their fellow Americans. We have become overly sensitive on one hand, where in the city of Boise, we have people eliminating a mascot that has been there since the beginning, right? We've eliminated the Braves and calling it the Brave. Utterly irresponsible, utterly ridiculous, because it's offensive. And yet we have people on companies that are owned by Comcast Cable Company, NBC, saying we need to destroy people because of their race. That's not Jesus's way. That's not God's way. And of course, this goes unpunished. This goes uncensored. This goes just how it is.
book that Donald Trump has turned the world into Gotham City. He's turned the whole country into the old New York of the 80s that he remembers, where he's just running it like it's the same sort of scams he was able to run. Where, right, he couldn't get respectability, but he could buy his way in. He still did get all these bigwigs, very famous people, even the Clintons, to show up to his wedding when he married Melania. He was able to buy his way in, even if he was crass, because at the end of the day, people want money. And so that is the thing. You know, Donnie Deutsch said this. People just want the money. And so a lot of people are willing to say, I don't care how much violence. I don't care how many kids lose their parents. I don't care. I just want my money.
Well, remember, this is.
Now, remember, when people criticize Sean Hannity and others, they're talking about a group of people right here, the white people, right? And when we get offended because of somebody says something to me, Chris Cuomo's offended because somebody called him Fredo. He says that's the Italian N-word. Well, they better get rid of it in The Godfather. And if your name is Fredo, what is that?
This is a facet of white America, right? Racism and oppression always come with an economic argument attached to it, right? I'm sure if we went back in the day, like antebellum cycle was saying, oh, I'm not in it for the slavery, but I do want those cheap cotton tees, right? Like, I'm sure that's what was happening, right? Look, I disagree with...
You know, it hurts me laughing about people that were oppressed. And they're making fun of it for their own political gain, to get more ratings and everything else. This is why we need to pray to God to make the world a better place and to give us all an understanding that these depraved liberals just don't seem to comprehend. Traffic and weather together, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Dave. Aquaman joins us now. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning.
Good morning, sir. I graduated from Pocatello High School in 1986. And the mascot was the Pocatello Indian. And one of the things that our school did right and did well was they used to invite the people over from Fort Hall Indian Reservation to perform. They had dancers that would show up in full regalia and perform for the student body. And as a result of how you look at things, you can demonize any subject, you can demonize really anything. But it's the motives behind the finger pointing and how you're approaching a subject when you start demonizing it. That, to me, I see the left embracing just full-out Bolshevism and this creeping incrementalism to recreate, after they've destroyed the country, recreate it in the image that they want. But the whole thing with the Pocatello Indians, and I had two older siblings that were also Pocatello Indians, was that we honored the people. They were considered to be something, a group of people that were brave, that were courageous. And when they came in their regalia and they danced for us, they were treated like rock stars. Difference between then and now.
Well, are the Meridian Warriors next?
I don't know, brother, but, you know, it's something that we have to talk about. You know, to me, do we want to honor a group of people, or do we want to erase them and say that even honoring them is an insult? Here again, to me, it's all about the lens. You know, like a kaleidoscope. Do you want to skew something, or do you want to recognize the beauty and the originality of a culture?
The reaction is troubling, Aquaman.
It is, and I thank you very much for bringing these things to the table, because otherwise most people aren't going to have a clue until it's too late, until it's already been done.
Well,
love you guys.
We love you, and I saw your movie the other day, King of the Sea. So good job.
What did you think of the tights? The scales? Did those scales look realistic enough to you?
I really like the orange scales. Yes, they did.
Okay. Hey, if you ever want to borrow my trident, you know, hang it somewhere in your office, just as it's a great conversation starter. Anytime you want to borrow my trident, use it. Take it out when you're walking the pooch. You can have that trident as long as you want.
Aquaman, bless you. Thank you, my son. Take care.
Bless you.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate everybody calling in today. But don't go anywhere. Glenn Beck is coming up next. here with Kevin Miller in the morning. Great week ahead. Do want to thank Ray Amaya as always. Jared doing an outstanding job learning the Jedi skills right here. Don't forget Sean Hannity this afternoon. Just keep it here. And remember, the App Store, Google Play, the KIDO Talk Radio app. It's free. Have a great one.